Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Brandon, Community Manager with University of Phoenix. And today we're having an honest conversation about addressing doubt and fear in your career. Today we're answering your questions on the topic and sharing about self-talk, reframing your thoughts, beyond fear. Joining us are University of Phoenix career advisors, Jamie Johnson, Ricklin Wood, and Alice Rush. Thank you for joining us. First up, we have Jamie, who will discuss more about the importance of self-talk. Jamie?
Thank you, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Sometimes we don't realize the power that we have when it comes to how we communicate with ourselves. Self-talk, what is it? What does it mean? Well, it's kind of like our internal monologue. It's our internal dialogue that we all carry with us every day. We've had it since we were born. And it's kind of directly related to how we communicate with others, how we come across our sense of well-being and happiness. And most importantly, it can either be positive, where we think the best, look for the good things, are optimistic, or it can be negative, or, oh no, woe is me. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. Who ever thought that I could do something like that? Pessimistic. And the truth is, we have the power right here to make a choice. I think one of the greatest quotes that comes in my mind, I think about it often. I remember seeing posters when I was growing up as a teen from the famous French philosopher René Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." And it connects with that whole sense of well-being, who we are. If we think it, we become it. We act out on it. We express it. And one of the simple techniques that I use when I'm thinking about, well, how can I be positive, is something we all can do: a smile. For example, did you know a smile can affect how you come across, the sound of your voice, especially on a telephone, but in any kind of situation where you're meeting people, an interview, for example, it can affect the whole atmosphere that you bring to the table. I had a student I was working with recently who experienced what it's like when that negative side of us of self-talk takes over. And it was all connected to smiling. She was on a phone call with an employer, and normally she's bubbly, positive, and she really is confident, and she's an amazing person. But she, like, I've been there, we've all been there, she froze. And so she came across very monotone, wasn't her normal bubbly self, very professional, asked the questions, but didn't have the same heart and passion that you would normally hear from her, which is what can happen when that negative self-talk takes over. And when she finished the conversation, her husband said to her, because he was nearby listening, she said, what happened? You weren't yourself. It sounded like a robot. You weren't friendly. And she realized she had forgotten to smile. We don't realize little things like that. Our self-view can impact what the worldview is of us. And something as simple as a smile, that optimistic self-talk, is such a powerful tool we can control even with just a smile. And definitely, obviously, in the impact with the job search, it affects us, or in our everyday life, how we come across. Think of it this way. It's our worldwide view of our lives, of who we are, in that wide angle lens of the photography of life, as a dear friend, Carla Hunter, loves to say. And it can help you look at the big picture, the possibilities, the options. Negative self-talk stops us, you freeze. I've been there. Recently, I was in a place and I froze. I couldn't think of the options because I was afraid. So, like The Little Engine That Could, a story I remember reading as a child, and I think came out as a movie a few years ago. The little engine had a load to take. Nobody else would take the load on. And as he was faced with going up the hill with this large load, he said, "I think I can. I think I can. I think I can." And as he got to the top, "I know I can. I know I can. I know I can do this." And they got through and broke through. And so as we look at this topic today, think about what you can do. Use those positive phrases, smile. And as Walt Whitman said, think of it this way: keep your face through the sunshine and the shadows will fall behind you. Thank you so much. Look forward to hearing from our fellow colleagues Alice and Ricklin today. Brandon, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. And, like you had mentioned, positive self-talk is so important. I mean, I think of athletes all the time, if they're on the basketball court, they're thinking about the shot going in before they even shoot it. So positive self-talk goes a long way. Well, next we have Ricklin, who will discuss reframing your thoughts. Ricklin? You might be on mute, Ricklin.
Hang on, let's see here.
We gotcha.
How about now?
We can hear you. We're good to go.
All right. Thank you so much, Brandon. And hello, everyone. Your analogy to basketball and sports is perfect and leads into what I'm going to talk about in terms of reframing your thoughts. And you mentioned that athletes often envision the shot going in before the ball even leaves their hand. They're not thinking, what if I miss it? Because I think when you have that thought of what if I miss the shot, you're more likely to miss the shot. So what I want to talk about is overcoming your fear by reframing your thoughts. And, fear is normal. It's normal. It's natural. As human beings, we are hardwired to perceive threats to our well-being and those that we care about so that we can respond accordingly to protect ourselves. And that's known as the fight or flight response. And for those of you who are familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have innate needs for psychological safety and well-being. And our jobs and our careers are one way that we take care of that need. So when you're looking for a job, if you're unemployed, it could really bring some concern around, how am I going to make it? And so it could cause fear to creep up in your job search and while you're making that career transition. And there are some common things that cause fear in your job search and during a career transition. And every one of us experiences fear differently, but some common concerns are fears of uncertainty, fears of criticism, and fears of, probably most common, rejection. And one of the biggest challenges with regard to uncertainty is we don't often know when we're going to get that job offer. I've heard stories of people applying for multiple jobs and going on interviews and making it to final rounds and not being selected and really feeling defeated because of that feeling of rejection. And then even fear of criticism. So, showing up to an interview and perhaps not having all of the ideal experience and getting that feedback and, causing some concern there. And then just the overall fear of not doing well in the interview, because at the end of the day, the interview hinges on, whether or not we land that role so we can support our families. So one of the ways to overcome fear is really by trying as best you can to reframe your thoughts. And sometimes it's easier said than done. But as Jamie mentioned, our self-talk is so important. And so the things that we think about can have a really, really profound impact on what we experience during our job search. So one of my favorite quotes is by the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So perhaps instead of thinking, oh gosh, how long it's going to take me forever to find a job, try to focus on the positivity that's possible. So reframe that thought and say, well, you know what? I know the right opportunity for me is going to come along at just the right time. And then instead of focusing on the experience that you may not have, which is a common concern that I hear for job seekers, focus on the experience you do have. There is a such thing as educational experience. It matters. It's valuable. And we often don't give ourselves credit for the experience that we do have. So when you shift your focus from the lack of experience and focus on the experience you do have, you'll begin to feel yourself become more confident and less fearful about rejection and criticism within the job search. And then even when you do get the email that says, sorry, we decided to go forward with another candidate, try not to look at it as rejection. Sometimes rejection is redirection. Perhaps that was not the right opportunity for you. And maybe there's something even better coming down the pipeline. So try not to personalize rejection. A lot of times you may not be selected for a position because there was already an internal candidate in mind even before the position was posted. So the rejection, if you will, is not always about you per se. It has to do with things that are totally outside of your control. So try not to personalize it. And then thinking about the fact that it's okay to feel the fear, but to do it anyway. That's what true courage is all about. And lastly, I'll say, what we focus on expands. So the more you think about the things that aren't going well on your job search, the more of those negative feelings you're going to feel. And there's so much power in being able to take control of your own thoughts and the narrative that you're sharing, with yourself, that self-talk that Jamie mentioned. And so think about what's going right. Even in some of the most adverse times, there's something positive that you can focus on. The interviews that you're going on, and even if you haven't gotten the offer, you're gaining some really good experience with the interview process. So when that one job comes along that's for you, you're probably going to knock the interview out of the park. So try your best to reframe and refocus your thinking on the positive possibilities ahead. Brandon, back to you.
I think what I love most is the redirection instead of rejection. That's awesome. I mean, when one door closes, another one opens. So perfect. Well, thank you, Ricklin. Now, Alice will share more about moving beyond fear. Alice?
Wonderful, Brandon. Thank you.
We lost
All
you.
right.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
Excellent. All right. I am so delighted to be asked to be part of this panel. I've been a career counselor for over 25 years, and fear is one of the biggest issues that we face as coaches in trying to help our clients move through the fear. And as Ricklin said, just do it anyway. I wanted to start off with my presentation by sharing a personal experience with you. When I was in graduate school and I was getting my master's in counseling, we had the opportunity to see videotapes of very experienced expert career counselors sharing their techniques of how to help their clients achieve their career goals. And I'll never forget this videotape videotape back in the day. Dr. Howard Figler, the author of The Complete Job Search Handbook. And I found it to be intriguing that he only asked 2 probing questions of his clients in each of their sessions. The first question was, what do you really want to do? What are your career goals? What are your career dreams and aspirations? Because he felt that each person really knew deep down inside what they really wanted to do, but didn't oftentimes give themselves permission and the space to actually even research it, or they just had these ideas in their head. So he wanted to bring those forth. And then the second question he asked is, why aren't you doing it? What are those fears that are getting in the way of your ability to move beyond those fears? So I wanted to make this a very real talk for you and participatory. So what I'd like you to do is just, if you have a piece of paper, you could jot this down even in your phone. You're not going to share this in the chat. This is really going to be for you personally to revisit later. But take a moment to think about, what are your greatest career dreams? What do you really, really want to do? Maybe it's, maybe you'd like to write as even a side hustle, or maybe you've always wanted to think about becoming a counselor yourself, but you're just not ready to pursue that for whatever reason. Again, that gets into the fears. Maybe you want to be a teacher. What are those dreams that you have? So just jot those down. And the next thing we want to do, and I'm assuming you have those ideas on top of mind right now, is what are those fears then that are getting in the way? So most common fears are, I'm not even going to consider doing that career because I won't be able to support my family. I know it doesn't pay very well, or it's too competitive, or I'm too old to reinvent myself. I mean, it could be a myriad of fears. But what I want to do is have you write those down now. Because the reality is that we can't move into action and we can't move beyond our fears unless we face them head on. Usually they stay at the subconscious level and we're not even aware of them, but it just sabotages our ability to move forward and get unstuck. So very important is that we journal those fears down, that we're aware of them, they're in our conscious mind. And so I'm inviting you right now to take the opportunity to be very real. You're not going to share this with anyone. You're just going to write it down and say, okay, I think I'm too, as I said, too old to do this, or I don't have the ability to do this, or I'm not going to make enough money. I'll give you an example. So when I was managing a career center at Sun Microsystems long ago, before Oracle took over, I had a client who was in IT and he really wanted to be a teacher. He wanted to be a high school teacher. He wanted to teach math. But his dad said, he'd never make any money doing that. So he went into computers, but he was very unhappy. And I said, do you really know how much you can make as a teacher? And are you aware that you could have a teaching career as a portfolio career with multiple revenue streams, given that you have the summers off and you get off at 3:30, that you could have other sources of income to make a sustainable wage while you're really doing what you love? And let's actually entertain the idea of researching and just creating that space to challenge, not as disrespect to your father, but let's research this. So he did. And he talked to people that were teaching, and he found out that he could make an extra $1,000 a month teaching on the side, in addition to, and working with adults, in addition to his, modest salary. And he found out that he could make as much, if not more, with this portfolio career strategy than staying in IT. So this was a tremendous success story. Of course, it's just so important that we move beyond those myths and we face those fears. So I want you to be scrutinous and look at that list right now that you wrote down of your fears. Too old. Well, do you really know that you're too old to reinvent yourself? Have you talked to people that are older, that are in a variety of occupations that you can learn about? Is it true? Or are there opportunities for me to work in other areas where gray hair is an advantage? Our knowledge-based fields in particular. I think of myself as, if I was going in for heart surgery, would I rather have someone who was just out of college, or would I rather have someone that maybe had some gray hair? So knowledge-based fields, higher education, government, tend to love people that are older. So do we really know that has to be the reason why we're not going to reinvent ourselves? So I'm going to finish my talk with one of my favorite quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt. She's so inspiring when she talks about dispelling our fears. And she says, a great deal of fear is a result of just not knowing. We do not know what is involved in a new situation. We do not know whether we can deal with it. The sooner we learn what it entails, the sooner we can dissolve our fear. So I invite you all to take that challenge. Are your fears, are they based in fact or myth? Thank you. I appreciate being invited today.
Thank you, Alice. And I think after the stream, I'm going to be writing down my own list of fears, and I'll be tackling those very soon. So I appreciate it. Well, I'd like to thank Alice again, and also like to thank all our panelists for participating. Now we're going to move into the questions and answers portion of our show. First question is from Cynthia. She says, this is something I'm always working on. How can I change my self-talk so it becomes a habit?
I'd be happy to answer that one since we talked about that earlier. I think the first thing all of us can do is start with writing down what are our fears. I think Alice, shared a great example, 2 questions by Dr. Howard Figler. And what is it that stops us from going where we want to do? And then let's get the facts. Let's not look at the myths. Let's look at what's the reality behind it. For example, if you're, feeling down about something, do you really know that's the case? Just like she shared. Was the salary really what it is? Is there really an age limit? There was somebody I was working with, and they were 50 years old, and they thought they were too old to work in higher education. And we started doing some informational interviewing, and they discovered that there were several people who had changed careers in their 50s and were able to find opportunities. And sure enough, this person was able to find the networking connections and get an entry-level job into the field. So start first with focusing on what the truth is about something and write down little things. I had a friend who put little sticky notes on the mirror every day and focused on the positive for that week. What were accomplishments? What are things? Think about so things are good and positive that you can do. And then write down those fears and then challenge them. That's one of the techniques. And I'm sure my colleagues have some other thoughts they can share too.
I'd like to just add that, whenever I have a negative self-thought come in my head, I try to just actually, the more mindful we can be, that we even have this inner chat is the first thing. So I think being conscious, if you practice meditation or dance or rock climbing or anything that involves complete, an awareness of yourself and your thoughts, that's the first step. But then when you see a negative thought come up, it's important to just say, cancel that thought and think of the opposite. Create that space of what is, then it begins to be kind of fun, like a game that you play with yourself. Well, what's the opposite of that? And then that could be a habit for you in your internal dialogue.
I like it. Yeah. And we're in a world now that, I have to turn off the news because of, the things that we're seeing all the time. So, we, like you said, we have to build upon the positivity. And if you do that, the outcomes can be great.
Brendan, I just want to say one more point to that too, is that find your support group. Who are your support group? Because they can also give you some good reflective feedback about what it really is like, who you are. They know you. So another great way is reach out to others who know you to get the facts and get the encouragement, because they're going to be rooting for you and they can help you.
Yeah, sometimes when you're stuck in the weeds, it's hard to really see a way out. But when you have support from others, they're like, hey, it's not as bad as what you think it is. Let's go ahead and get you through this.
Yeah.
Well, we'll move on to our next question here. This is from Becky S. She says, how can I come across confident even when I'm feeling doubt or uncertainty?
I'll take this one, Brandon, because can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things I work with clients often on is building up confidence, and confidence really comes the more you know about yourself and perhaps the job that you're pursuing. So I actually had a conversation, interview prep with a client yesterday, and we researched that company inside and out. We were on the LinkedIn profile, looking at people who work there, looking at some of their content. And through that process, she shared with me at the end that she felt so much more confident in going into that interview the next day because she was equipped with knowledge about the company, very self-aware about how her skills and experience aligned with that role, and even how her values aligned with the company. And we spent about 45 minutes just reviewing and researching the organization. And by the end of that conversation, she felt more confident. So what I've seen is that the more research you do, the more knowledgeable you are. Know your resume. A lot of folks have their resume, but they don't really know it like they should. And so the more you understand about your background and experience, and then doing the research, you will feel more confident and more prepared. Preparedness leads to confidence.
Yeah, as much as I always try to go in with the plan, because like you said, if you prepare and you have a plan, you just feel better about it. At least I do. So very good advice. All right, we'll move on to our next question here. This is from Kristen G. She says, thank you, everyone. How often do you recommend to redo the fear list?
Yeah, oh my goodness. I guess, I recommend checking in with your consciousness regularly because it's just like pollution, We've got to check in and see, what are my thoughts? Check in with the self-talk, and then that contributes to the fear. And the fear can morph into more fears unless we have, as Jamie put, surround ourselves with a support system of validators, people that are really positive to counteract what Brandon was saying about what's on the news. What are we fed with? We're fed with a lot of negativity and fear in our society. Unless we make a conscious effort to surround ourselves with the positive, then we can get into that fear list becoming exponential. So how often do I recommend redoing the fear list? Well, if you're in my profession, we look at ourselves every day because we have to walk the walk, right? So we keep journals, and that's part of, if you've ever been through therapy, you keep a journal and you're aware of what's going on, and just being in tune with, are you polluting the air with your negative thoughts as you get up in the morning? Or are you sending out positive vibes? And that can clue you in when you need, if you're feeling like everything's ugly out there, you're being very critical, frustrating easily, then those can be clues that, okay, maybe I need to look at what's going on a deeper level and start looking at that fear list.
I like the daily check-ins with yourself.
Yeah.
My whole aim is to be better than I was yesterday.
Hey, like that.
All right. Well, let's look at the next question here. This is from Greg M. He said, do you have tips on staying positive when negative things happen, such as losing your job or not getting a promotion?
That's a really good question. And I'll kind of start us off because it immediately put me in the mind of the mantra that I like to use in looking at rejection as redirection. And I know it can sound much easier because, of course, there's going to be disappointment that comes with losing a job or not getting a promotion. But there is a reality that, things happen in life generally for a reason. And sometimes you don't know what's in store on the other side if that experience didn't happen. I know people oftentimes who found themselves comfortable in a job and never pursued anything different because it was comfortable and it worked for them. And it wasn't until they lost a job that they started doing a reassessment of really, what are my career goals? What are my interests? And they started to see other possibilities that they did not see because they were comfortable in that job. And it was almost like the door had to close in order for them to actually really step into their purpose and what they were meant to do. And similarly with the promotion, while sometimes it's not even a promotion that we're looking for or that we really need, sometimes it's a different challenge. So really assessing, was it really the promotion that was most important to me? Was it more money? Was it the title? Really understanding what was it about the promotion that you desired. And if it didn't work out in this company, is that a signal that maybe it is time to start looking for opportunities elsewhere that will give you that you were looking for within that promotion? So I just think when rejection, if you want to call it that, happens, that's a signal for us to reassess and really look at, okay, where am I going, and really trust that these things that are happening, even though they're negative, sometimes you have to go through the negative before you can get to the positive. So again, I know it's easier said than done, but just stay the course and trust that everything will work out just as it's supposed to.
And I would like to add to what Ricklin said too. We were talking about support earlier. I know that when I've been through a tough situation, reaching out to someone who has that lending ear is really valuable, because they can be a comfort and a help for you when you're going through something. We know, just like Ricklin said, the only way sometimes people change is when we get uncomfortable. We get in that place, and finding that support. Sometimes you just, what are positive things you can do for yourself? Exercise, taking care of your health, doing good mental health tips. Like some people will, go through therapeutic groups or join a group or be a part of a book club. Or I know one time I was in a tough place and I watched 10 hours of Anne of Green Gables. It's what I needed to break out of that negativity to go forward. I was going through a tough time. My mom had just died. We all have different ways. Put a list together while you're in a good place of what is a positive place you can go when things get tough.
I have just one more comment. Having worked in outplacement for many years, working with thousands of people losing their jobs, and I came across a very interesting study through social science research, and it was actually called Righting the Wrongs. That if we journal, those that were, and it was actually an experimental group, those that wrote down their feelings, and again, they didn't share them with anyone, but maybe the injustices or whatever they felt that was going on, and feeling discarded, and after they worked there for 20 years, and you need to get that out of your psyche before you can move on and then be positive. So for us to say, oh, let's just cancel that thought and think the opposite or something positive is really not realistic for most of us. For most of us, when we've lost our jobs, we are haunted by this negative tape that plays over and over in our head, because our animal mind's trying to make sense of what happened to us, or why did I lose that promotion opportunity? And those thoughts make us feel small. And what they found in social science research is that if people could write down all that garbage that's going on in their heads, trying to make sense of it, it's not something you're ever going to make sense of, but you need to release it. The goal of the animal mind is to problem solve. That's its purpose. But when we lose our jobs, we don't have control over that. That's not a problem we can solve. So to clear the tape, there's something miraculous that happens when we write things down. It engages both the right and left hemisphere of our brain, keeps our animal mind satisfied that it's doing something to resolve the problem, and then we're able to release and move forward. So actually, experimentally, they found that people got jobs faster when they journaled and got these thoughts out, because then they could go on and interview in an authentic, positive way and be champions for themselves again. But they had to create that space for getting those negative thoughts out and putting them down on paper or through your computer.
I think that's why a lot of us will share a negative situation with a friend, because it's helpful to get it off your chest, right? So it's kind of writing it down as well. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll move to our next question here. It says, Alice, what was the quote and who by?
Oh, Eleanor Roosevelt. What was the quote? So this is a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. You don't want me to read it again, do you? Or a great deal of fear is a result of just not knowing. If you wanted to search quotes by Eleanor Roosevelt on fear, you would get a whole bunch more than this one, but I'll repeat it. Just not knowing. We do not know what is involved in a new situation. We do not know whether we can deal with it. The sooner we learn what it entails, the sooner we can dissolve our fear. So that was the quote. But just Google Eleanor Roosevelt quotes on fear, and it'll come up along with a lot of other great ones.
Yeah, I just realized, Alice, you reminded me, Franklin Roosevelt, her husband said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." I always remember that because they were facing unprecedented times with World War II and the Great Depression, and he and Eleanor together with the U.S. government took us through very tough times, and that's really a great example of facing these fears and finding tools like the Roosevelts did with the country to help people find hope in the face of fear and tough times.
She's the one that mentioned, Jamie, that we should all try to work through a fear daily in order to feel fully alive. It was something like that. It's not, again, we can Google the exact quote, but I always think of that to be true, that like Brandon, when he said, I try to be my best every day, I try to be better than I was yesterday. I mean, that's really the gist of what Eleanor is saying that's so important, is that, and examining that fear list every day and thinking, okay, I'm going to conquer this one. Maybe it's public speaking and I'm going to take Toastmasters or whatever it is. When we conquer those fears, what do we feel? We feel confident.
Yeah.
We feel alive. Like, I got the tiger by the tail. That's how I'm living the life, right? I'm not just watching the parade. I'm in the parade of life. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And once you're in the flow, it's like whatever the Nike commercial said,
Just do it, right?
Yeah, just do it. And of course, a body in motion stays in motion, which is really a law of physics, but it's true. Once we get in action and we reframe it, like Rick once said, then we focus on what we can do, just like you were sharing, and go forward. It sounds easy, I know, but we're all been there. I think how many times I've been stopped. And with the help of others and having my tools ready to go on the side to grab a hold of, there are many different ways, and we're of course here to help you too, to that job search here. All of us here in Career Advising Center, our goal is to be there with you through the process.
I know each and every one of you guys have helped many students conquer several fears, more than a few, I'm sure. Well, we'll move on to our next question here. It's from Tim B. He said, I used mind mapping as a visual to help me. Could you address the power of mind mapping in defining our life goals?
That's a really good question, and I'll go ahead and start us off with that one. I think it really ties very well to what Alice was talking about in terms of journaling. I think it's the same concept of where you're really getting these ideas and these goals outside of your head and onto paper so that you can see them visually. There is power in visualization, and I think that's actually what makes mind mapping so powerful, is the fact that you're able to actually see it. And as the old saying goes, is this: if you can see it, if you believe it, if you can see it, then you can achieve it. And I think that is the true power in mind mapping, is if you get it out of your head and onto paper, or if you're using a digital mind mapping tool and you're able to actually connect the dots of how completing this goal will catapult me to the next goal. And so it's really just a matter of getting it out of your head. I think there's something also cathartic about mind mapping in the same way that journaling is. I think it's a different form of journaling, but it's very specific and concrete, related to goal setting and goal achievement. So I think it's a great question, and I do believe that's the power. When you get it out of your head onto paper, it becomes more real.
Like you mentioned, I mean, it's that visualization. It goes a long way. I don't want to say part of the animal brain, right? But I think there's something to that. Mm-hmm. We have 2 more questions here. Our second to last is from Cassandra C. She said, "What are your suggestions to help counter fears? or addressing the fears that we have?
Go ahead and Alice, do you want to go ahead and start? I think you were getting ready to speak.
No, the first thing I was thinking of are really, I think of this phrase, making friends with your fears. And what does a friend do? Well, a friend validates us. A friend says, you can do this. How can we, really what you're asking is, how can I love myself more? You know, how can I be a champion and advocate for myself? So a lot of that is affirmations. I mean, we've heard this before, and athletes do it. I mean, any leader will work on this skill, and that's how to affirm and validate. And it's well, they say, you know, fake it before you make it, but we really want it to be authentic, you know. And so a lot of times in counseling, when we're working in helping our clients counteract fears, and I think Jamie mentioned this earlier, it's so important to reflect back on times when you have done this before, when you faced a fear head on, and then what happened at the end. And so I think taking an accomplishment inventory is a helpful exercise to write down and prove to yourself, oh, wow, that's right, I did do that. Oh, I did accomplish that. Oh, wow, maybe I can reinvent myself. I've done it before. So you're almost creating a case for yourself to, again, appease that animal mind that might be criticizing you and keeping you down.
Yeah. And if I could add to that, when you look at the word fear, and you guys may have heard this, like fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't remember if it was Alice or you, Jamie, who mentioned it, like really asking yourself, what am I really afraid of? Is there any truth to this? So there are real threats in life for sure. And that's why we're wired to protect ourselves from real threats. And so I think really analyzing what you're feeling as fear and really asking yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Now, if you're talking about a true tragedy, then yeah, you've got a threat that you've got to deal with. But oftentimes, like you mentioned, public speaking, what is the worst that can happen? You make a mistake, you're on mute, you know, whatever it may be, and you'll keep going. Or, you know, maybe you don't do well on that interview, but at the end of the day, you know, there's still another interview that you'll have down the pipeline. So it's really about really assessing your fears and identifying how real is this and how detrimental is it, to me. So I think that's one way to counter your fear, is really analyzing the fear and the reality of the fear and the true impact of that fear.
And I just wanted to add to what Alice and Ricklin shared. I had a client I was working with who was petrified of the interview process. And the question that she froze on was, tell me about yourself. And why are you interested in that position? We all know that one, right? And what does that really mean? And so we put together an outline and had her practice. And she wrote her outline down and she practiced. And when she went into the interview, she reached out to me later and told me, Jamie, I nailed it. And she said, what helped me face that fear was practicing, that I took control of it instead of letting it control me, because I didn't know what to say. I now knew what to say. And I had my feet down. And I even had my little outline by the computer because it was a virtual interview. So I could keep track in case, fear jumped in. I had my outline there. I could grab onto it. And so sometimes it's just getting those tools in place, kind of like what my family's been in the military, and they told me about their special forces training, how it prepares them for the worst. And it's kind of like you do practice, so it prepares you for whatever you face.
Yeah, practice is key. I mean, we're talking about fears, and public speaking is a huge one for a lot of people. Well, how do you overcome that? You just have to do it. I mean, the more that you do it, the more you're in front of people, the easier it gets. And I'm sure it's like that with a lot of the fears that we have. Well, we're going to move on to our final question here. This is from Leah M. She asks, does University of Phoenix assist us with refreshing our resume?
Okay, on the count of three, ladies. 1, 2, 3. Yes!
Yes,
We absolutely do.
Students and alumni help refresh your resume and update it, make it targeted and focused. And this is probably one of our most frequently asked requests for service. But we also help our students and alumni with moving through all the aspects of career management, from self-assessment, figuring out what do I want to be when I grow up? And sometimes I'll have 50, 60-year-olds that are alums reassessing that, coming back to the university asking for career assessment testing, to how do I network? How do I tap the hidden job market? How do I get involved with the professional association and a support system? How do I move into management, leadership development, advising, interviewing? As Jamie said, we do a lot of that, helping people with interview anxiety. Preparation is key, but also practicing with our clients, our students and alums, all the way through salary negotiation to, I've got the new job now, how do I establish a positive relationship and assess the key stakeholders in my new job? So we could do the whole ongoing career self-management, skill building as well.
So all our students and alumni need to know, hey, you have a team here to support you. So, you know, go ahead and give them a call and they're ready to help you out. Well, I'd like to again thank our panelists for participating and thank you, the audience, for tuning in. You can learn more about University of Phoenix's Career Services for Life commitment at phoenix.edu/career. And with that, we hope everyone has a great rest of your week.
Thank you.